Hello everyone. Welcome to the third live interactive session for this course, Ecology and Society. You please tune in and if you have any doubts, queries, I'll be happy to respond. So meanwhile, I'll try to give a brief summary of what we have discussed and covered so far in the past few weeks. So we had covered so far 8 modules and 9 modules. In 9 modules, we have discussed partly about the religion in the age of environmental crisis, which we have discussed in the 8th schedule, in the 8th module, and which have continued in the 9th module as well. So in this, we have covered some of the different religions, which of course has to do with their role and significance with regards to conservation, uh, sustainability, and so on and so forth. So we have also discussed why religion plays an important role when we discuss and talk about the whole issue of environmental sustainability. And beginning with the debate which has been uh, based on the seminal work of engineer Lynn White, the historical roots of our ecological crisis has opened a new debate in trying to find an alternative where the ecological crisis which we have encountered is perhaps to be located in its historical roots, that is religion. And being religion in nature, it is important for us also to engage in trying to find an alternative or an answer which is very much embedded in our religious practices, beliefs, behavior, so on and so forth. And then we move on to dealing with the module on environmental ethics. So within this, we have discussed 3 important themes, beginning with deep ecology, which is propagated by the Norwegian philosopher Arne Nest. So Nest has tried to evoke a different approaches in terms of trying to build or advocate the whole idea of self-realization, and he strongly advocate and talk about the new ecological philosophy, which he fondly called as ecosophy. So, self-realizations or eco-philosophy or ecosophy is nothing but to engage in deep questioning, that is, how do we position ourselves with regards to nature. So, our perceptions, our outlook, our worldview in some way has to be questioned and interrogated. So deep ecology also tries to posit that it is different from the normal practices or principles which is being practiced mostly by uh, the many of the human societies within shallow ecology. So deep ecology actually emerges in confrontations or in opposition to shallow ecology, and deeply engages with finding an alternative in trying to deal with the whole notions of environment or environmental issues. So we have also, dealt at length about the philosophy which is being propagated by Gandhi, or in other words, we call it as Gandhian environmentalism. So within this, from the writings of Gandhi, particularly the notions of Swaraj, Swadeshi, or so on and so forth, which speaks volumes about how the notions of self-reliance in some way talks about the very fundamental of how we negotiate, how we relate ourselves in our everyday life with our surroundings. So Gandhi is also known for his, uh, uh, well-known popular aphorism, which is called "The world has enough resources to reach to meet the needs of human and not rich." So similarly, it is going in line with what Nas has developed in his deep ecology, because Nas was also pretty much influenced by the writings of Gandhi, and in one of his interview, that what are the main tenets of deep ecology, he sort of respond by saying that simple in means and rich in ends, to a large extent has encapsulated or tried to cover the whole notions of or new paradigm of environmental thinking. So then we move on to social ecology, which is propagated by another philosopher called Murray Bookchin, wherein he argued that the way in which we treat or our attitudes towards nature or environment is strongly embedded in our social structure, our worldview, our thinking, perception about nature in some sense is how what is there in the society, or how do we relate with our fellow human beings, that automatically reflect in the way we, treat, or how do we relate ourselves with the nature and environment. So now, having said that, we move on to a different module entitled as natural resource management. So over here, we begin trying to locate the importance of local or traditional knowledge by engaging with the works of none other than the noted ecologist P.S. Ramakrishnan in his book One Sun, Two Worlds, An Ecological Journey. So this book in some way enters our imaginations or interrogate the way in which how the so-called formal knowledge and informal knowledge interacted, or where these negotiations or dialogue has been getting involved. So the traditional knowledge, which is primarily based with that of the informal, that is mostly the farmers, the rural folks, and which are based on hands-on practical knowledge. Whereas the formal knowledge is based on the textbook knowledge, which is based on certain kinds of concepts, and so on and so forth. So at this context, we are also reminded about the way in which how Levi-Strauss tries to contextualize the whole notions of what he coined as the bricolage or the bricolier, wherein he tries to, in his, seminal works in the book called The Savage Mind. So in that, he tries to engage upon the way in which how knowledge system functions in the minds of the traditional people, and at the same time to that of the engineer. So knowledge system actually functions in different paradigms, and uh, which goes on to see the very fundamental differences, and one needs to contextualize these very debate or notions of how we perceive uh, our surroundings and the social relations, as well as the social structure which we are in. So, and then we go on to the final module, which is entitled as Debates on Shifting Cultivation, that how shifting cultivations or these traditional forms of farming, which is prevalent in the South Asian Massif, in the upland areas, where people have engages with these forms of farming, which is considered to be outdated or uncivilized or unscientific from the Western civilizational discourse. So I have also, tried to bring in the whole debate of whether shifting cultivations is beneficial, or to what extent it is sustainable, or to what extent it is eco-friendly. There are a lot of extensive studies mostly carried out in the Northeast India region, particularly by the noted ecologist P.S. Ramakrishnan and his team. And in many of their works, there is findings which reveals that the traditional farming, most important is shifting cultivations to a large extent, has contributed to the biodiversity conservations, and it is a sustainable agricultural practices. But moving away from that, there are also ecologists and environmentalists, mostly the scientific foresters, who have actually borrowed this perception about the unorganized or shifting cultivators, who are possibly seen to be a threat to the environment and possibly responsible for the deforestations. Now, it is also important to see the works of James C. Scott in the book The Art of Not Being uh, Ungoverned. Talks, at a very lengthy in what he called as or term the people as Jumia, which is a term coined by William Ben Chandler, and strongly argued that many of these Jumia or these communities have actually or could be categorized as a state evading communities, and hence they engage in such kinds of agricultural practices. So I'm sure in this particular course, Ecology and Society, what we have actually tries to do is, by engaging upon the subdiscipline of anthropology, which is called ecological anthropology, by picking up few of those ecological anthropologists and tries to make sense of what we understood as human ecology, and the conceptions of nature, contested domains and boundaries of culture, and also the various paradigms in human environmental relations and the nature, environment, and belief system. So I'm sure we will have some bit of knowledge in terms of how do we relate between the human society, uh, ecology, and the environment, and where people have, or communities, most important, the indigenous communities have, you know, uh, maintain some kind of relationship with nature and the surroundings since millennia. And as society has evolved, and with the intrusions of market economy, global capitalism, so on and so forth, many of their means of lives and livelihoods are being threat. And one could see, the way in which how things have evolved and changed over time. And there is an urging need to many of the disciplines like ecologists, anthropologists, and sociologists, and a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary approaches is vitally important if we have to locate and situate the whole debate or notions of this ecology and society. So I hope and look forward to respond to any queries or any doubts. Uh, Till then, I'll sign off, and all the best for your final exam. Thank you. Question tadi